Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Quick shout out to my newest patron, Marshballs. Thank you for choosing to support the channel. As I mentioned, I don't want to go too far into the weeds when it comes to the tariffs right now until we know that they're staying in place for some time. But I think zipping around at a high level to see how everybody is reacting to this news can still be valuable. Britain is working intensely with Washington to secure an exemption from US auto tariffs, and they could review subsidies enjoyed by Tesla to better support its own industry. Britain's finance minister, Rachel Reeves, said the government could review an electric vehicle incentive scheme that, yes, has given subsidies to Tesla. She was asked if Britain could save car makers like Jaguar, Rolls-Royce, and Aston Martin, and she said, "That's what we're working on. We've got a few more days left of those negotiations before these tariffs are due to come in." So there's at least some proof that some players are indeed viewing this as a negotiating tactic, or at the very least a window of time where negotiations will be had. She also said we are looking at the zero emission vehicle mandate, which is why some of that money goes to Tesla, and looking at how we can better support the car manufacturing industry in the UK. Translation: if that ZEV mandate were to go away or be delayed, that would likely mean less regulatory credits going to Tesla. Cars are indeed the UK's biggest export to the US at nearly $10 billion per year. The White House estimates this would raise $100 billion of revenue for the US. And every time I see news about tariffs, I also see people that don't really understand who actually pays these fees. Contrary to what you might think, the countries exporting these vehicles do not pay the tariffs directly to the US. Instead, the tariffs are actually paid by the American companies that are importing these vehicles or parts into the United States. So think of companies like dealerships, distributors, or the US divisions of foreign automakers. Those are the companies that will pay the 25% tax to the US Customs and Border Protection when the goods, in this case vehicles and parts, cross the border. As a kid, I was always a Lamborghini fan, so here's an example. Let's say a Lamborghini dealership wants to import a $750,000 Lambo to the US. Given a 25% tariff, that dealership would now have to pay a $187,500 fee. That's because all Lamborghinis are made in Italy. And at this point, the conversation typically shifts to if these countries want to pass on these extra fees to the customer. And for a more relatable example, think about the Mach-E. It's currently made in Mexico, and Ford is already losing billions of dollars on its EV program. So in my view, Ford doesn't even really have the option to absorb all of this tariff. They almost have to pass on all of this cost to the customer. There is a wrinkle right now I don't see many people talking about, but under the USMCA, the White House is saying that these vehicles will only face the 25% tariff on their non-US content. So all USMCA compliant parts will stay tariff-free, at least until a new process is set up to tax the non-US portions. And that just means vehicles made in Canada or Mexico would only be taxed on the parts that are not from the US, not necessarily on the entire value of the vehicle. Cox Automotive is already estimating that these auto tariffs could have a 30% production disruption in week 1. In their slide deck, they said the unthinkable now appears to be the new reality, but for how long? If these were to stay long term, they expect production and deliveries cut, the supply tightens, incentives decline, new and used prices go up, and some nameplates are eliminated. The situation definitely is a market mover though. US auto imports right now are about $275 billion, which is almost 1% of US GDP.
Sir, or is this permanent for the rest of your term in office?
Oh, this is permanent, yeah, 100%, yeah.
Trump says they'll be permanent, but that could just be a strong negotiating tactic. Ontario's premier is already saying the US has indicated Canada will see lower auto tariffs. Mexico is seeking preferential treatment from these auto tariffs. And Trump is still threatening more tariffs on the EU and Canada if they work against the US. Elon said, to be clear, this will affect the price of parts in Tesla cars that come from other countries. The cost impact is not trivial. He also said, important to note that Tesla is not unscathed here. The tariff impact on Tesla is still significant. So why is Elon sharing sentiment like this when nearly all of the mainstream media is saying Tesla wins from these tariffs? It's because Elon doesn't see competition. He's always been laser focused on Tesla and capital efficiency, and he understands that even the smaller percentage of parts that Tesla gets from around the world getting hit with 25% tariffs will have a non-trivial impact to Tesla's margin profile. This is also a way for Elon to prepare the market for lower margins over the next few quarters from a catalyst that's outside of Tesla's control. So yes, Tesla will be hit, but everyone else is going to be hit that much harder. And to be very clear, because there was a lot of confusion last night, this will affect the price of parts in Tesla cars. Meaning this 25% tariff is not only going to impact final assembly, but parts as well. Some early quotes from Wall Street. Bernstein said, Tesla wins, Detroit bleeds. Tesla is the clear structural winner, and they're better insulated from trade risk. On the other hand, Ford and GM could see declines of up to 30% in EBIT. For everyone else, this is a margin reset and a real drag on near-term earnings power, talking about companies other than Tesla. Analysts and executives are still calculating the financial impact, but it's likely the tariffs will severely disrupt supply chains and lead to production cutbacks and layoffs. Rivian and Lucid are actually the only other automakers that also make 100% of their vehicles in the US for US buyers. Trump did make it clear that he did not consult with Elon about these auto tariffs because he may have had a conflict of interest. And don't forget, Tesla recently sent an unsigned letter warning that these tariffs could lead to retaliation from US export partners and higher prices for Tesla parts that can only be sourced internationally.
Tesla, will tariffs be good? I think they may, it could be a net neutral or they may be good. He has a big plant in Texas. He has a big plant in California. And anybody that has plants in the United States, it's going to be good for, in my opinion.
Obviously, I'm not an economist, despite having a degree in economics and finance, but my view is this would be a short-term headwind for Tesla's margins and some possible supply chain disruptions. So short-term minor pain for long-term gain where Tesla's competitive positioning plays out over time. This given its ability to pivot, drive down costs, be flexible, maintain positive margins, and continue making products better at lower price points, while everybody else is really hit with a haymaker while they're already banged up trying to learn how to make EVs profitably and while they're learning about neural nets to make their cars drive themselves. But I just keep coming back to the question, are these tariffs really going to stay in place for the long term? Gene Munster shared part of his analysis explaining how this will impact Tesla. We're not going through all of it, so pause if you want, but as a result, Teslas would effectively appear 5% cheaper relative to the rest of the new car market. So Tesla could sell an additional 20 to 25,000 vehicles over the next 12 months. That despite his expectation that US new car sales overall would actually decline by about 500,000 units for the year. We'll leave it there for now. There's still plenty to unpack, but as I've said, let's wait for the next week and see how all of this goes. Let's face it, in 2025, there are a lot of folks that are headline-only consumers. They see a post with a headline in one snippet and then run with that as part of their updated operating system. Clearly, this is dangerous. Perfect example. Compare these two headlines of the same story. Number 1, Trump's new auto tariffs spark global outcry, warnings of job losses. The next one, Trump places 25% tariff on imported autos, expecting to raise $100 billion in tax revenues. With no other context, the same event can be manipulated depending on the publication's political leaning. And I'm now immediately picking up on all of this bias thanks to Ground News, the sponsor of this video. Shout out to all of you, in addition to those in this image that have shared your enjoyment of Ground News. It really is great to hear that my goal of enhancing your lives in some way is being met in working with a company like Ground News. Their mission is simple: give readers an objective and data-driven way to read the news. And you can get 40% off the unlimited access Vantage plan using my link below or the QR code on the screen. I think we would all agree, for as enjoyable as X is, it's incredibly polarizing and does feed off division and narratives. You can say goodbye to all of that noise with ground news because there are no toxic algorithms at play, and there are plenty of features like the My News Bias to show you your reading history, the blind spot tool to show you stories underreported by either side, and with every news story you can get all of this data like who owns the source, the political lean, and the factuality, which has absolutely saved me plenty of time over the years. I really do enjoy supporting ground news in this media climate, so if you'd like to do the same, you can head to ground.news/electrified linked below, or use my QR code to get that 40% off the Vantage plan for unlimited access. Sawyer had reported that Chef Eric Greenspan was going to be running Tesla's Hollywood Diner. He did share a link to an Instagram account which turns out not to be affiliated with Tesla at all. But Elon did reply to this post saying it will be cool, which I would take as confirmation that Chef Eric Greenspan will indeed be running it. Tesla has officially launched leasing options for the Cybertruck in Canada, starting at just under $1,600 a month for the all-wheel drive variant, or just under $2,000 for the Cyberbeast with $0 down for a 48-month term and an annual driving limit of 16,000 kilometers, which is just under 10,000 miles. That first batch of megapacks from the Shanghai Megafactory we shared last week is going to the second stage of the giant Western Downs battery in Australia. Shanghai will be the supplier for the burgeoning Australian battery storage market, where Tesla still retains a 1/3 market share. Turns out that statistic comes from here. According to Alt Energy, using data from Rosetta Analytics, Tesla remains the dominant supplier in the Australian battery storage market with a near 1/3 share. They said clearly it's not suffering the same sort of backlash as its EVs. And it'll be the same story for the Tesla Semi. Ray for Tesla shared a story about Andy Lee, a Chinese influencer, a big Neo fan, and somebody that was never fond of Tesla. Well, after trying out FSD, he concluded, though not perfect and there's still room for improvement, it's far better than anything else in the market. He said, I experienced FSD for an entire afternoon and finally understood what leading by a wide margin means and what end-to-end marketing is all about. My previous thoughts of debunking the FSD hype were wrong. I admit this is currently the most advanced and best driving assistance system that everyone can use. Now let's balance that incredibly bullish anecdote with this one that's a bit more comical from Devin Olson.
That protest is critical. The ability to speak freely is critical.
This is funny. We're stopped so far back. That's the stop line. It's definitely just confused. I think it thinks this is... I saw that porta potty was registering. Yeah. See, stop, porta stop. That's bad.
If you somehow didn't see it, the old pit stop sticker on the porta potty tricked FSD. It even showed up in the visualization. Shifting back to some truly unbelievable testing from these Chinese FSD testers. Look at this. This guy initiates FSD on what appears to be a sidewalk, and just watch the rest.
不用试，试不了。哇，他找到了这个缺口，他找到了这个缺口。我靠，他让行。哇塞，这合理吗，学长？好了，兄弟们，哇，他这右转掉头了，兄弟们，哇，这是什么东西？这是什么东西？
Here we have a clip from my car yesterday. Unfortunately, I wasn't recording at the time, but this situation actually left me stunned for like 5 minutes and my mouth hanging open, but not in the way you may be expecting. FSD is set to make a right turn into oncoming traffic, so I'm going to scrub through this and go forward. So at this point, you can see FSD decided to make this turn with this truck barreling toward me. Now, with this view, it looks like the truck is super far away, but it's really not. Bear in mind, this truck is going about 50 miles per hour and is very close to this intersection, and I am still in the edge of the other side of the intersection. In this frame, you can barely see it, but by this point, I had slammed on the accelerator to try to get up to speed. But as I took over from FSD because it was making this turn incredibly slow, this truck did decide to move into the other lane. I was in the Model 3 Performance, so by the time I stepped on the accelerator, I was up to speed and out of the way. But my point here is this: if I wasn't paying attention and I did not slam on the accelerator and this other driver of the truck did not change lanes, there definitely would have been an accident. To this moment, I have no idea why FSD decided to go in this scenario. I'll show you the view from my front cameras too, because it's the best look at when I slammed on the accelerator. I wasn't even fully on the road yet. So yeah, of course I don't enjoy sharing things like this, but please stay vigilant out there and let this be a reminder. Because again, this car going 50 miles an hour and FSD making that turn, taking its jolly old time, means that truck was about 1 second away from hitting the back of my car if he was not paying attention, and if I chose to not intervene. There you have it, FSD with some unbelievably good, but very nearly some unbelievably bad. We now have lawmakers in New York looking to target Tesla. State Senator Pat Fahey, who has championed EVs in the past, just introduced a bill that would pull Tesla's permits for in-person sales in New York. She said, no matter what we do, we've got to take this from Elon Musk. He's part of an effort to go backwards. The same person who in the past has championed legislation to fully lift restrictions on direct sales by EV makers. She wanted to see EVs take off to cut emissions in New York. And she said the bottom line is Tesla has lost their right to promote these when they're part of an administration that wants to go backwards. Well, I guess it's so much for caring about climate change. I can't imagine this would have too much juice behind it, but it's New York, so I guess anything's possible. We'll see. A Tesla owner who had his Model X keyed has filed a civil lawsuit against the man that did it. I'm sharing though because he's seeking $1 million in damages. His lawyer said that his client wants to send a message with the lawsuit. He's hoping to discourage other acts of violence. We don't allow people to act out based on what they believe their political affiliations are and what upsets them and who they're upset with, and allow them to take things into their own hands and become essentially a vigilante. I'm certainly a fan of deterring future criminals, so we'll see if this plays any role in doing exactly that. You probably saw the video of the guy, DeMarkian Cox, driving his little four-wheeler into multiple different Tesla vehicles. Well, he's currently being charged with 1 count of felony criminal mischief and failure to identify. He's currently being held on a $105,000 bond. And the man that was responsible for the Tesla fires at the collision center with the resist on the building, and the one that fired gunshots into the vehicles, well, that man has been arrested, and it's 36-year-old Paul Kim. He's been charged with multiple felonies. Kim remains in custody as the investigation continues. I personally love EV charging news, as Ashley and I enjoy our little road trips, and we have the joint venture between Pilot, EVgo, and GM announcing they've now installed more than 130 fast charging stations across 25 different states. This connecting highway corridors from Michigan to Georgia, Minneapolis to Milwaukee, and Dallas to Nashville. They have plug-in charge support up to 350 kilowatt speeds and premium rest stops at these Pilot and Flying J centers. Drivers are giving the network high marks on PlugShare, not just for speed, but for the creature comforts, the lounges, food options, 24/7 access, and clean facilities. The network is strategically placed along major interstates and travel corridors. As a reminder, this collaboration is aiming to install up to 2,000 fast charging stalls at 500 locations nationwide. Some of these 24/7 amenities: free Wi-Fi, modern restrooms, lounges and food courts, grocery and convenience retail, and pull-through and canopy-covered charging stalls ideal deal for trailers. And it's true that so far most of these plugs are likely to be CCS, but they have come out and said that they will be transitioning more to NACS going forward. Now, of course, Tesla's trip planner focuses on supercharger locations, so to find these locations, you will likely have to use a third-party app like PlugShare or ChargeHub. And if any of you have a third-party solution that you really like, drop it in the comments below. Stellantis is offering voluntary buyouts to UAW employees at more than 20 facilities in Detroit and Toledo, with payouts reaching up to $72,000. Why? Because Stellantis has faced financial difficulties in recent years. The buyout program is open until May 8th, but it remains unclear how many employees the company is looking to cut. Tesla stock was a roller coaster today, at one point getting up to $291 per share, but closed the day down at $273.13, up 0.39%. This while the NDX was down 0.59%. It was another higher volume day for Tesla, trading about 47% above the average. And if you haven't noticed, the average volume over the past 30 days is now up at 109 million shares, whereas for the majority of the last 6 months, it was sitting down around 80 to 85 million. Don't forget, check out Ground News linked below to grab that 40% off if you're interested, and to everybody that already has, thank you very much. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Please like the video. If you did, you can find me on X, linked below, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.